Okay, hello, you nines, and welcome to our next unit. We're looking at a study in this term called Happily Never After. And basically, what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks is looking at some of the stories that we've grown up with in the media and in pop culture and movies and things like that, and thinking, well, they want us to look at them in a certain way, but do we actually agree with that? Or can we challenge what we're reading in some ways and learn to be a little bit critical? So I'll show you what I mean by that. If we look at a common example, even if you never saw Disney's Cinderella when you were growing up, you probably got the basic idea of what it's all about. This girl who's villainized by her stepmother and her ugly stepsisters, and is forced into a life of poverty, has a fairy godmother visit her, gets to go to the ball, has the Prince Charming fall in love with her, and ends up happily ever after. That's how we're supposed to read that story. But if I want to challenge it, I can start asking quite a few questions about whether that story actually holds up. Would that actually be a happily ever after if we really thought about it? For example, one of the issues I have with that is if this was supposed to be such a great story for women, why does Cinderella have to wear glass slippers? They would be incredibly uncomfortable, especially if she's being forced to dance in them. I mean, if she rolls her ankle, she's going to break those slippers, shards of glass are going to go through her feet. Basically, it's an occupational health and safety nightmare, really. That is no woman's fairy tale to have to wear really uncomfortable shoes like that. So I can look at it that way. I could also challenge it and think, well, does a story about a pumpkin being turned into a coach, having a fairy godmother who looks after you and grants your wishes, does that really hold up? Does that sound like a true story? I mean, this fairy godmother who apparently transforms the mice, who are Cinderella's only friend, into footmen to take her into the ball. Is it just me, or does this sound like this might actually be a story about Cinderella taking a whole bunch of drugs and hallucinating? And really, that doesn't sound to me like a story that's appropriate for children. Because if she's not taking drugs and she's just hallucinating this whole story, then at best, she's just an incredibly lonely girl who, again, only has mice as her friends. And it's left her to be so lonely that she's basically just imagining up the situation. And that's, again, at best, just a bit of a sad sort of story to be telling. So I don't think it's that happily ever after all. And then the third point that I think we've got to really seriously think about in a story like this is she marries a man called Prince Charming, whom she's only known for one day. I mean, it's our Romeo and Juliet situation all over again. She doesn't even know the guy. She doesn't even know his real name. All she knows is that he's Prince Charming. How can you marry someone when you don't even know their name? I think there's a very good chance that, they say they've fallen in love, they go ahead and get married. Suddenly she's gone from a poor servant girl to the queen of the land. I'd be thinking there'd be some serious backlash coming to that story. I'd be thinking that Prince Charming and his new wife Cinderella would discover, after not too long a time, that maybe they don't actually have that much in common. Maybe their upbringings have been too different. Maybe Cinderella sees how the prince just spends his days and is really privileged and doesn't think about the poor, and never would have liked her if she'd just been her normal poor self. And I think it wouldn't be too long before we'd be seeing a divorce in that relationship. So maybe this story is more of a happily never after. All right, so that was a really quick example, but that is the sort of thing we're doing in this next unit of study. As I said, we're going to look at a whole bunch of different songs and films, mostly Disney actually, because they're good ones to get into. We're going to be reading some articles, looking at some model fairy tales and some other things that come up in pop culture. And we're going to be thinking about how can we recast characters who were originally presented as villains to us, but argue the case that they should maybe actually be considered as a hero. Or even if they're not the hero, then can we explain away some of the reasons why they're villains? Like maybe they had some difficult things going on in their life that we need to have a little bit of a chat about. Or the people that we're supposed to be seeing as heroes, can we look at that person a little bit more deeply and think, actually, I don't know that they were so great after all. Or like in the case of Cinderella, could we help a character realize that maybe this happy ending for them doesn't really work out? And the final big thing we're going to be doing is looking at some of the things that are problematic in these earlier stories that come up in our culture. So how are things like sexism, homophobia, racism, people being body shamed, or even classism, looking at why are the rich people always the ones who get the happy endings, or are poor people being portrayed as if they're bad just by virtue of them being poor, that sort of thing. So we're going to be working up to quite a few different writing exercises, and at the end of this unit you will be writing your own response to a story, talking about why it might be a happily never after all. All right, so that's the end of this initial explanation, and let's get into the first activity. Thanks guys, and looking forward to hearing your thoughts as we move through this unit. See you later.